Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming back at you with another Wargaming in miniature video. In this video, we're going to be continuing on with our Caesarian Romans. We are going to be painting. Now, I'm going to paint this figure right here. This is the Centurion. We're going to paint the Centurion. I am going to be painting all of the figures, but whenever we get back to the Centurion, that's what I'm going to put on the screen. I'm going to edit out all those figures on the right there. I'm going to paint those, but I'm not going to televise those. I'm only going to show when I go back to the Centurion just to see, so you can see the steps on painting the individual models. All right, so let me go ahead and get started. Now the first color I'm going to use is folk art. I'm going to use a lot of folk art paint during this painting, and right now I'm going to be using skin tone. Alright, so we are going to continuing on. We're going to paint the Centurion. What I'm doing here is I'm just painting the arms. Basically, you know how to paint flesh. We're basically just going to put flesh on the arms. We're going to avoid any of the shirt, and we're going to paint the hands. Now, any mistakes that are made during flesh is perfectly fine. Like when I go to the helmet, I don't mind getting paint on the helmet or on the shirt or the pants or the, I guess there's not a pant, I guess it's a skirt, or the greaves, because the flesh is going to be covered with a wash later. It'll also be covered when I start painting the armor. So basically, I just take flesh and just slap it on. So let's go ahead and get that on there. I apologize for sometimes I get off camera because this camera is actually in my way, but I want you to be able to see everything that I'm doing. And I'm using a Citadel brush here. I'm using a Citadel starter brush and folk art skin tone, and I add a little bit, not a whole lot, of water to the skin tone just to give it a little bit extra smoothness, just to let it smooth out. I have not painted with a gray primer in such a long time, so this is really an experiment for me as well, because I would like to see how I do with the gray primer. I've noticed just from doing these figures that as opposed to a black primer, which I've been doing a lot, the black primer, what I will do is I will paint up to right next to, like I would do the flesh right next to the cloth, and then I would leave like a black line between the cloth and the skin tone. But with gray, what it's actually allowing me to do is see all the detail. With black, it kind of puts everything in a shadow and I miss some of the detail. But with this gray, it's pretty good. Okay, and there's the flesh, and just doing a little touch up here, and we're going to move on to the next step. All right, the next step here is lipstick red folk art. I went ahead and put some in the palette, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of water to that, stir it up, and then go to start painting the figures. Got me a little stirring stick here. And here's our Centurion. Let's go ahead and get him taken care of. Now, what are we going to paint with the lipstick red? Well, his undershirt. That's really all I need on that red right now. His crest will be painted red, but that'll be later. All right, now in this case, I try not to get it on the flesh because I've already painted the flesh. But I have not already painted the armor. So it's okay if I mess up and get it onto the chainmail because I still have the armor to paint. But because the armor is a metallic, I don't want to try to paint a metallic on top of red, so I am doing my best to not put red on the armor. But luckily, Warlord Games makes a really good model, easy to paint. There we go. Now I've noticed that his shirt, where else is this shirt at? Well, the shirt's on his sleeves. He's got little short sleeves. Got to paint those. Now the mold line between the sword and the sleeve is kind of hard to see. If it was black, I probably wouldn't have been able to see that. But even so, I'm going to paint that sword later and I can fix it up then. So I'm going to continue on and painting the sleeves. Okay, and what else? Part of, okay, yeah, the under the sleeves and his underarm, as well as the cap sleeves. If I do wind up getting any red on his skin, I can always go back over and touch it up with skin tone. But again, the wash is going to get into any of the cracks, and that's going to hide any errors that you might make. Washes are very important, and I'll show you that later. Right now, we're just going to do the red on the sleeves. And you notice I dipped my paint quite a bit. I just put a little bit of paint on the brush, put it on the model, go back and get more paint. Don't try to coat your brush with paint so that it is it's so saturated, and also don't try to use your brush to force the paint off the brush onto the model. It should flow freely. If it doesn't flow freely, then you've got the paint is either too thick or there's not enough paint on your brush. All right. What am I missing? Just doing a little touch-up work. All right, and when we get ready to do the next step, I'll be right back. All right, now in the next step, I am creating my own wash with real brown. There's the real brown right there. It's great for the flesh. I'm going to put it all over the flesh. What it'll do is it'll highlight, it'll darken the cracks. And what we're doing is we're using real brown. I'm going to put it in the palette, and all you need is just a little drop in the palette. And then from there, we're going to add water. And you add quite a bit of water. I don't know if I meant, so yeah, it's just a little bitty drop there. What I was thinking about when I was painting this was to make sure to tell you that there's no real need to buy pre-made washes. I mean, sure, they're pre-mixed, they're in a bottle, they're pretty much at the right consistency, but with a little bit of experimenting, a little bit of experience, you can make your own washes at the fraction of the cost of a bottled wash. So you can imagine a bottle of paint costing $3, and the wash would cost you $3, right? Well, if you were to make the wash, you would take that bottle of paint, you'd use one drop and some water, and you've made a huge amount of wash. Now right there, I've just created my own flesh wash using water and real brown. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm applying it to the non-Centurion here. Let's cut this out. All right, now we're moving on to the Centurion. You can see the guy to the right of the Centurion, what he looks like. Basically, I just apply it very thickly over the flesh. Now, if you notice on the feet, I painted flesh all the way down to the through the sandal laces, right? The flesh is all the way where all the sandal is and everything. Well, that's because I knew that when I washed the feet, the sandal laces would stand out. They would become, they would look like little leather straps or whatever. And later on, I put a little heavier wash deliberately on where the sandals are to get that effect. All right, I got a pretty good coverage here. Let me just make sure I'm hitting everything I need to hit. All right. Oh, right there inside the leg, I think I need to hit the leg. I haven't hit that. All right. Or, wait, what are we doing? I'm moving on to another figure. All right. We'll be back with the next step. Okay, the next step is the armor, and we're going to do the metallic gunmetal gray. Metallic gunmetal gray for the chainmail and the swords. Now, let me go ahead and mix this up, and we'll get started. Put a little drop in there. Maybe add a little water. About a 1-to-1, maybe even a 2 paint to 1 water ratio. Stir it up, and we'll get started. All right, now let's get out this Centurion and show you the next step, the metallic. There it is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the shoulder. We're going to do the arm, the, what do you call it? The chest plate. It's not really a plate, it's all chainmail. But we're going to do the chest part, basically the part above the belt. And it's okay to get it, again, you know the deal, to get, if it's okay to get it on top of the belt, because I haven't painted the belt yet. But I am trying to avoid getting it on this flesh and avoiding getting it on the red. If I do make any mistakes, which I do periodically throughout this whole painting process, I have to go back and touch it up with a little bit of red or a little bit of flesh, just depending on where it's at. Now I am trying to avoid the belt and avoid the blades, but again, you don't really need to. If you could, because you can always later go over it, because I'm getting ready to paint the blades and the belt later. So, but it's always better to just kind of get it in the area that you need it in, and not to paint excessively into areas you don't need to paint it. What else? Oh yeah, the weapon. Yeah, painted the blade inside and out. There we go. Whoops, sorry. Put that in the way you can't see it. All right, he looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and move on to the next guy. All right, now we're going to paint the bronze. That's going to be on his greaves and his Corinthian helmet. Here it is. It is called Metallic Solid Bronze. I'm sure that that's an older paint. That's actually an older paint bottle. I think they've changed the names, but what we're going to do is we're going to paint the helmet. That's a Corinthian helmet, actually. And which I did a little research on the helmet after the last video, and yes, that was actually a Roman helmet style. They just called it Corinthian. I think it was adopted after a nation they might have conquered. And I'm painting the base of the crest, the part that would actually hold the horsehair, and of course don't forget the back of the helmet and the cheek guards. Now you could, if you wanted to, paint the sword sheath bronze as well, or you could actually paint it steel, the gunmetal gray. You could have painted it that color, or you can paint it any other color, because what they did is they either had bare metal sheaths or they actually covered them in wood, and in that case you could paint the wood would have a stain to it or a color, but also they covered it in leather, so you could have different leather colors. So the sheath can pretty much be any direction you want to go. Green and blues and browns were very popular. Okay, so we're also looking at the greave here. The greave is bronze as opposed to steel. And it's not a whole lot of bronze. There will be bronze later because, and I'm trying to get it inside there because as you can see there's flesh on the inside of the greave. Well, I want that to be bronze, so I'm painting it bronze. You'll see later that I pull my bronze out and paint the sword hilt later. I'll paint it bronze. Okay, so let me go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, in this next step, what we're going to do is we're going to paint the inside of the shields. While everything else is drying, I'm going to go ahead and put what's going on here. Okay, yeah, I'm going to paint it rusted pipe. Yeah, rusted pipe is kind of a really light brown wooded color. I'm going to go ahead and mix it up, paint it on the inside of the shields here. All right, now here we go with a little bit of rusted pipe. Now you would assume that the rusted pipe would actually look like rust, but no, it's actually like a really light brown. It's great for wood. I love it. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it, not a whole lot. I'm not using a whole lot because I want the inside of the shields to be kind of grainy, because when I use the brush, and I'm going to paint it lengthwise, and the reason why it needs to be grainy is because when it dries, it'll have a very subtle wood grain to it. It's kind of a little trick that I have. If you put too much water, then it'll be too smooth, and if you don't put enough water, it'll be too rough. So you got to kind of maybe experiment or just go to 1-to-1. That's what I did. Excuse me. So I'm painting it lengthwise, and I'm kind of almost like you would normally dry brush, but I'm using, of course, it's like a fully wet brush. And this will give you streaks. You can kind of see the streaks in the shield to the left. And just continue on and do all the shields. I'll be right back. Now I'm also going to use the same color to paint. I'm adding a little bit more into it, but I'm going to use the exact same color to paint a couple of other things on the soldiers, namely their belt and the dagger sheath is what I paint with this. The sword sheath I'm going to paint a solid color, but the dagger sheath and the belt, and actually the chainmail has a leather trim that goes around the edges of the chainmail, and I'm going to paint that this color as well. So let's go ahead and get this mixed up, and we'll start painting. And here we go. Here's the Centurion. Let's do it. Adjusting the camera a little bit. That's not good. Go back. Go back up. There we go. See, I'm trying to get where a good spot for comfort painting, and so that you'd actually be able to see what I'm doing. So we're going to hit the belt. There's like where the belt is folded over. Got to paint that, of course. I'm kind of examining it. I'm checking out the trim around the leather around the edges. I said, you know what, that's supposed to be brown as well, so let's go ahead and touch that up. Okay. Now it's super easy on the backside because that line is pretty bold. But let's go ahead and get the backside of the belt. And the sword is actually tied to the belt with a strap. There you go. I paint the dagger sheath with the same leather brown, which I also use as kind of an inside of the shield. Because they did actually have leather on the inside of the shields in some instances. Now the top line of the sword, right below the hilt, I painted that the leather brown as well, so that it's actually called rusted pipe, but that's to make it look like it's being held on by the straps. And see, there's a strap right there that actually went to the belt. I mean, you could probably paint those a variety of different colors. Just whatever you think will stand out good on your model. Make sure you get the sheath. I give it a second coat real quick, just because that first coat didn't look like it was standing out too good for me. I want it to be bold contrast so that you can see it. There we go. Now you got to position your model just right. I'm doing this off camera. That sucks. Because I want to paint the, okay, that's the belt. But I want to paint the backside of that armor as well. There's like where that armor shoulder flap lays. I want to make sure. So I can do a double coat on the belt just to make sure it stands out brighter. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot the back of the chainmail. Yep, there's all three sides. There you go. Connect the front and back there. There you go. That looks pretty good. What do you guys think? I think that looks pretty good. All right, well, let's go ahead and put this down and move on to the next step. All right, this next step, I'm just touching up some red. I just mixed up a little bit of red again because I want to make sure that the crest is also red. And any areas that I might have accidentally hit any of the fabric, I will make sure that I go through and hit that with red as well. Like the sleeves, anywhere the armor might have, maybe I bled some of the armor over, or maybe I bled some of the tan over into the sleeves. I'll make sure I hit that as well. But I'm doing the crest. Now, the Roman shirt actually should be, and there should also be maybe a scarf that extends up from the neck, because those shirts were tall enough that when you wore the chainmail, the collar would prevent the chainmail from chafing the neck. So I figured I would paint the back of the neck and the front of the neck as well. maybe just a little bit. All right, and then I will be back with the next step. All right, now shields, I'm also going to do the red facing of the shield as well. And now shields are basically a 2 or 3 step process for painting. So what I do is I'm using the lipstick red on the shields. And this part is going to be fairly watered down, so it's very thin. And you can see that I'm coating the entire shield, the central rib as well as the boss and everything else. Just for a heads up, the central rib should be red. It shouldn't be gold or black or any other color. It should be the same as the shield, because that red on the shield is actually a cover or paint. Either way, that rib would have been covered or painted as well. Now, the only thing that might be different is the metal boss that is riveted to the center. That covers the hole where the hand is gripping the shield. All right, so let's go ahead and paint this on real super thin. When it dries, we're going to do another coat a little bit thicker with a slightly lighter shade of red, which will give you that highlight. All right, so we'll be back with the next step. Okay, now in this next step, we're going to go ahead and use the Model Master Panzer Olive Green, actually, which is kind of a blue-green, actually. It's not, but when it dries very dark green. So I thought it was a really good color to use on the Roman sword sheath. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use that on the sword sheaths, and let's go ahead and do that. But you can use any green or blue or metallic color on the sheath if you wish. And it's just pretty much that easy. That's like the only green on there. And I make sure I get the sides. And I flip it around to make sure I get the inside as well, because sometimes the sword sheath, it'll go down between the legs or something like that. So I make sure that I can get it from all sides. All right, that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, now that I've went ahead and finished painting all the shields, I also edged the shields with the gunmetal gray as well as painted the boss. But you'll notice that the ribs were red. I went ahead and cut out one of the decal sets. They come in 2 halves. I just cut the shield out basically. Got the left and right side, which will go on the shield. And I'm only going to do one shield for the Centurion, just to show you the steps. And let's go ahead and cut out one of the shields. I'm using an X-Acto knife to cut that last piece of sprue connector. Okay, it's been cut off. Now I'm going to go ahead and get some water in my palette so that I can soak the decal. It's a water slide decal. It's going to need to soak in the water for a good 30 seconds or so. Excuse me. But before I do that, let me make sure I get our decal set. I use Arrow set. What you do is you apply a coating of it on the location you're going to be putting your decal, and you should let that set for about a minute. What it's supposed to do is kind of clean and smooth or roughen. I don't know if it roughens or if it smooths it, but it basically cleans the decal location, and it makes it more, it prepares it for the decal. So when you place the decal on there, it'll actually adhere to it a lot better. And that is part of the problem that I have when I put this decal on. It wants to stick on too fast. So, okay, right now I'm going to push it under the water. Might not have put enough water in my little bin there, but that's okay. And I'm doing the left and right side of the shield at the same time, which is not necessarily a smart thing, but I'm doing that anyway. And right now I'm basically just waiting for the water to soften it up. Now I use a brush to kind of move it around on, just like I did the World War II decals earlier. You just move it around just until it moves, and when it does, then it's ready to go onto your shield. Alright, it's ready, so I'm going to go ahead and use my tweezers to pull it out, and I'm going to try to line up the shield transfer with the shield, and the paper keeps getting caught on the shield and dragging the shield along with me. So it's just a little bit of tweaking. Now I'm using a soft brush to move the decal around, and as you can see, it's trying to get all crooked and sticky and stuff. It's a lesson learned. Using a wet brush, you should be able to move your decal around, but this decal does not want to move anywhere because I think that arrow set, and then I even tried my finger saying, you know what, I'm going to try to move it with my finger, and it's not moving. It should fit perfectly because there's like these little grooves that fit right around the boss and everything on the clear plastic that you can't really see. That would have been good right there where it is, but I'm a perfectionist and I want it to be exactly where it's supposed to be. So I go up underneath the decal with my brush and try to move it that way. My fingers aren't even doing it. Yeah, so I'm actually struggling right here. This is I'm gonna have to say this is not the best way to do it. So I dig up underneath, I peel it off, right, where it's trying to stick, and then now I shuffle it and adjust it while the brush was underneath. There we go. But then I get a crooked little, I get a crease in the clear plastic part of the decal, and that really kind of upset me a little bit. But I was able to use a paper towel, apply pressure to the decal. It pushed out all the water. It pressed the clear part of the decal down perfectly smooth against the, and as you can see, it's almost perfectly, looks really good right there. You can still see a couple of the creases, and they really shouldn't be there. But as I press with a paper towel, it gets rid of that. I don't think I've done that yet. I try applying a little water, smooth it, get it smooth. Don't give up on me. I actually get this thing exactly where it needs to be. It just took me a little extra effort to do it. Okay, this is where I grab the paper towel. I apply pressure to it. I'm pressing the decal into the shield. And what's happening is by applying I'm pushing pretty hard actually. By applying that pressure, it's allowing the decal, I'm removing all the bubbles and getting rid of all the creases. You can kind of see right now that it's starting to look really good. It's starting to look pretty smooth. There's no creases or wrinkles in it. I was like, okay, that's pretty good. And when I'm done putting the decal on, remember I'm going to put the arrow set back on and let that set for about 4 minutes. And the second time you put the arrow set on, it actually melts the decal onto your model. So I didn't have any worries. I figured as soon as I put the arrow set, it's going to fix any issues that I might have had with that first decal. Second one went on a lot easier. It almost seemed like I knew what I was doing at that point. Almost. You still got to use a wet brush, move your decal around. Don't allow it to sit in the wrong spot too long because it'll start to set. And it's starting to look pretty good right now. This is probably a long part of the video that you don't really need to see, but I'm going to show it to you anyway because we're almost done. Okay, that looks pretty good, but I do still need to apply some pressure with the paper towel. So I grab that paper towel, I apply pressure on that shield. Now what that's doing is it's allowing the decal, and this is super important if you ever put a decal on top of something that's got a lot of texture. Luckily that shield doesn't. It's pretty smooth where I'm putting that decal at. But if it did have texture, like, I don't know, rivets or seams in the armor or whatever, when you apply that pressure, the decal will actually form fit to the subject matter. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let that sit and dry for a minute or two, and then I'm going to apply some arrow set on top of that. Alright, this is the arrow set. I'm applying it on top of the decal, and I'm going to let that sit for about 4 minutes. What you're supposed to do is let it sit there, and it becomes extremely soft when you apply the arrow set the second time, and because it's actually melting the decal onto the model. And that looks really good, just looking at it like that. That looks extremely good. Alright, we're going to go ahead and attach that here in just a second. Alright, here's our Centurion. We got our glue ready to go, E6000. And look at the Centurion. That guy looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with him. His face could probably do a little bit more work, but I can always add that later. And look at the shield. Looks really good. Let's go ahead, and all we're going to do is take some E6000. We're going to put a drop of glue on his fist, on his fingertips, and then just glue the shield onto him. A little bit of glue right there on his fingertippage. Grab the shield. Put his hand right in the hole. And position the shield right where it belongs. And then we let the shield dry. And look at that. That's the Centurion right there. I'm really happy with him. And the rest of the Romans look just like that. I just need to do the decals and put all the shields on. And then in the next video, we'll go ahead and base them up, flock them. And this is the rest of the guys that I was working on. So they're all pretty much done. I just need to do those shields. And then in the next video, we're going to flock them up. We're going to, base them up, flock them up, and I'll probably seal them as well. Alright, so thanks for coming out and checking out this video. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, please do. And if you like this video, please do. If you want to catch this next one, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to donate to the channel, go ahead and hit the PayPal me link in the link below, and that would be appreciated. Alright guys, you have a great day.